All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, there's a saying that perfect can be the enemy of good. And sometimes you have to understand that you do have to settle in life, especially if you're not in the position where you can get the optimal option that you think that you want or that you think that you deserve. That seems to be the case with the Dallas Cowboys and Mr. Jerry Jones. I'm already on record as stating that I believe that Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboy front office was setting Dak Prescott up to fail. Now, were they setting him up to fail so that they could get rid of him? Or were they setting him up to be in a position where some of his productivity may be compromised so that when it comes time for him to negotiate his long-term contract with the team, he's not going to be asking for the maximum? It seems to be the second option, because now Jerry Jones has come out and basically stated that he sees in Dak Prescott what he saw in Troy Aikman and what he saw in Tony Romo, and that Dak Prescott is clearly a long-term option. So they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Keep up with the Joneses. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones had the following to say about Dak Prescott's job security, telling USA Today this. He's long-term. Anything we need to see and need to know, I see with him. We know the problem with saying that about any player, but I don't mind saying it. I said it about Troy Aikman. I said it about Tony Romo. When you get one of those top ones, you can basically be that definitive.
So what is Jerry Jones basically saying about Dak Prescott? He's saying, look, Dak does not have the arm talent of an Aaron Rodgers or of a Jared Goff or of a Pat Mahomes. But here's what we know about Dak Prescott. He keeps it buttoned up. He's not going to fall down any Twitter rabbit holes. He's not someone who's going to try to act woke. He's not going to fuck up our locker room with all type of strange and silly protests. He's going to be a quote-unquote good soldier. And I'm sure that certain brothers will say, well, yeah, that's because Dak Prescott is the white man's nigga, or he's a house nigga, or he's a coon, and blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, the best way for you to be so-called revolutionary is to make sure that what you're doing, you actually have an end game for. And what I see with Dak Prescott is that he tends to be far more pragmatic in his approaches to life. Is he perfect? Absolutely not. We all remember when he got his ass whooped at spring break right before the draft. We remember when he and Ezekiel Elliott went down on vacation in Florida at one of those resorts, and they decided to buy water pistols shaped like penises. So he does have his ways about him. But one thing that Jerry Jones seems to understand is that Dak Prescott is the best quarterback for this team right now. Why is that? Because he's buttoned up. He could be a wild card like some of these other quarterbacks, and next thing you know, he's on the front page of the newspaper. He's leading Sports Center all over the place. And they're in the midst of trying to refurbish that team's image. And they're doing a pretty good job of it, because the Dallas Cowboys have one of the best defenses in the NFL.
Right? So putting Dak in the same company as Troy Aikman there, Stephen A. Do you agree with Jones?
I agree with what he said, except the part about comparing him to Troy Aikman. He's no Troy Aikman.
Well, basically what he's saying in comparing him to Troy Aikman and Tony Romo is that he's the long-term solution, at least for right now. And basically, once again, they're trying to put Dak Prescott in the position where his offensive numbers are not going to be gaudy enough for him to demand a maximum contract. They have to make sure that when it comes time to negotiate with Dak, that he wants to stay, that they want him, and that after they sign him, they're still going to have money to pay Zeke and whoever else they're going to have to pay on the defense. Because as of right now, they've drafted so well on defense that eventually they're going to have to let some of those guys go. But they do need enough cap space to sign at least 2 to 3 of those big-name guys who are in the process of developing into stars. DeMarcus Lawrence is going to be a star. I mean, one can state that he may already be a star.
He needs to stop that. And we need to get to a point. We talk too much about Cowboys and Cowboys lore from time to time. And we do not...
Well, you certainly do.
...not accord Troy Aikman the respect he deserves. This is a 3-time Super Bowl champion as a coach. By the way, as a quarterback.
Troy Aikman was an exceptional quarterback, especially in that system. They had a very basic offense. It revolved around running the football through Emmitt Smith and that great offensive line. But he had two great wide receivers on the outside. He had a great tight end in Jay Novacek. Of course, the receivers were Michael Irvin and Alvin Harper. They had a great fullback in Darryl Johnston. The Dallas Cowboys, they just had the best personnel of any team in the 90s. And it wasn't really even a close second. The only team that kind of sort of matched them for 1 year were the 49ers in 1994, when they had Jerry Rice and John Taylor and Steve Young at quarterback, and they had the great Deion Sanders. They also had Merton Hanks. Now, when they lost Deion, that caused the balance of power to shift over to the Dallas Cowboys.
By the way, as a quarterback who quarterbacked the team through its most adverse circumstances, not just coming in there when they went 1-15 out of UCLA, but ultimately winning 2 Super Bowls and seeing the ego of Jerry Jones affect the team because he let go of Jimmy Johnson.
Now, if you've ever seen the highlights of Troy Aikman while he was in college, he was an exceptional runner before he broke his leg.
Having to go through that year without Jimmy Johnson, losing a primetime Deion Sanders, Jerry Rice, and Steve Young and those boys in the NFC Championship game.
Now, I believe that Troy Aikman came out in the same draft as Deion Sanders and Barry Sanders.
That ultimately led to San Francisco winning the Super Bowl and then coming back the year after that and winning a Super Bowl again. Troy Aikman was the quarterback of that team. So let's stop doing that to Troy Aikman, who, by the way, is a fabulous announcer, by the way, a commentator.
Yes, he's very good.
But also, let's make sure we remember this. We like Dak Prescott. And I think the reason why Jerry Jones said this is because Dak Prescott, the player, is also quality as Dak Prescott, the man. He's also quality as Dak Prescott, a leader.
Well, most importantly, Dak Prescott is quality as an ambassador. He's someone that you want up on the podium in front of the cameras. We don't really know him as a man. Now, of course, due to some of the statements that he's made in regards to the Colin Kaepernick protests, things of that nature, he's become a polarizing figure, especially amongst a lot of the woke Negroes on the internet, the same people who are not going to do anything except talk shit all damn day. But he's become polarizing amongst them. He's become polarizing amongst a lot of Dallas Cowboy fans because of his lack of an ability to elevate the receiving core that he has. But that's not Dak's strength. Dak's strength is taking good personnel and not fucking it up. He's not that guy who's going to take average or sub-average wide receivers and turn them into good or great-looking wide receivers. That's not him. He's not Tom Brady. He's not Aaron Rodgers. But if you give him good personnel and a good system, he's not going to fuck it up. And what he's also not going to fuck up is his camera time.
Because he toes the line and he conducts himself in a professional fashion that seems more about team than himself. I think that's what Jerry Jones was looking for, and now that he has seen that through adverse circumstances is why he's giving Dak Prescott love that, as far as I'm concerned, Max, was long overdue.
I also believe, if I remember correctly, and one of you Cowboy fans can correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe that Dak Prescott has a degree in psychology. So that means that he knows how to handle certain situations when they arise that could become controversial if you take a misstep or something of that nature. He's not going to say anything that's going to cause a situation to explode or detonate. That's certainly one of his strengths, because he just recently had an issue with a couple of his wide receivers that were trying to put him on blast, and he smothered that very quickly.
I understand what Jerry Jones is saying, but you really have to look at first the Troy Aikman thing. I 100% agree. They had a great offensive line, those Dallas teams, right? Emmitt Smith was never the best running back in the world. That was Barry Sanders.
Well, it depends on the situation. And I've had this conversation before. I may do a video about it because a lot of brothers state that Barry Sanders is the greatest running back ever. Barry Sanders is the most exciting running back ever, in my view. The greatest running back ever, no. But the most exciting running back, by far, Barry Sanders. To this day, I've never seen an NFL player. I'm not even quite sure if I've seen an athlete with the fast twitch action that Barry Sanders had. The explosiveness and some of the obvious tendon strength that he had in his legs and his ankles to be able to cut like that. Unbelievable. Phenomenally exciting running back. For about 10 years, all the way from 1989 to 1999, 2000, when you sat down on a Sunday, you wanted to see Barry Sanders. When you sat down on Thanksgiving, you wanted to see Barry Sanders. Extremely exciting. But in a big playoff game, when I needed a running back that was going to guarantee me 85, 90 yards, 100 yards, 110 yards in inclement weather against a good defense, I don't want Barry Sanders because he's going to pussyfoot in the backfield too much. And against playoff teams, they're going to game plan against him. That's why he has so many bad performances in the playoffs. Right? The few times that he was in the playoffs, he did not perform well because oftentimes he played too much in the backfield. And in the playoffs, where you have teams that are going to key in on him, especially since he did not have a good quarterback, you don't want that. Me personally, I would take Emmitt Smith. I would take Thurman Thomas. In the playoffs, in a playoff situation, I would take them over Barry Sanders because I know they're going to find the hole, they're going to hit the hole. Now, some people are going to say, wait a minute, they had a better offensive line, they had better quarterbacks. That's true, but they also understood what was needed from them in a playoff situation. Once again, Barry played too much in the backfield, especially in the playoffs. And that's why you see you have those games, -2 yards in a whole game, 15 yards rushing for the game. Me personally, I would take Marshall Faulk just about above everybody. Marshall Faulk, to me, was probably the most impactful running back that I can remember seeing. Now, of course, you have Le'Veon Bell. You have the kid out there with the LA Rams. You have Ezekiel Elliott. You have a lot of these players, and a lot of them are really based off of the paradigm that was set by Thurman Thomas and later on Marshall Faulk. You need those running backs who not only can get you 4 yards on 3rd and 3, but they can also come out of the backfield. They are so imperative in big games. And just as a pure runner in the playoffs, I'll take Terrell Davis. That's just me, though. But once again, if we're talking about exciting, then hell yeah, Barry Sanders. If we're talking about regular season, hell yeah, Barry Sanders. In the same way, Randy Moss is the most exciting wide receiver I've ever seen. He's the most naturally gifted, talented wide receiver I've ever seen. But he could not shine Jerry Rice's shoes in a big game. No way in hell.
But Emmitt Smith was always a top 3 back, and he had a great offensive line that made him look even better, or they worked very well together. By the way, Michael Irvin was a contemporary of Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice is the greatest wideout of all time, but Michael Irvin was a top receiver.
Yeah, Michael Irvin was a great receiver.
Consistently one of the 2 or 3 best receivers in the league.
Absolutely. In the 1990s, it was always the same guys. It was Jerry Rice, it was Michael Irvin, Chris Carter, Sterling Sharp. And Sterling Sharp, of course, got hurt in the early 90s. I think he got hurt in like 94. He had to retire because of a neck injury. There was a wide receiver with the Detroit Lions that certain cats will not have heard of unless you watch football in that era by the name of Herman Moore. He had a few big seasons in the mid-90s. He was very good. But the top 3 guys of the decade, without a doubt, were Jerry Rice, Michael Irvin, and Chris Carter.
Year after year after year.
And also the great Andre Reed. Let me throw him in there as well.
And Troy Aikman was not the best quarterback in the world, but he was top 3 every year. A Pro Bowl quarterback all the time. Not to mention a Super Bowl champ. That's not Dak Prescott, and that wasn't Tony Romo. Tony Romo was never, let alone always, a top 3 quarterback, and neither is Dak Prescott. The question, but the idea that he knows he's got a franchise quarterback, I understand.
Absolutely, and also Jerry Jones understands that the team is too good to even be thinking about another quarterback because they're not going to finish with a bad enough record to be looking at the top quarterbacks coming out in the draft. But if you're Jerry Jones and you're looking at the level of the quarterbacks that are not coming out in the draft, these guys, you could throw them right in there and they're going to play great as long as you have a good offensive coach. If you have an Andy Reid or the guy out there coaching the Rams, McKay or McVay, whatever his name is, they're going to turn Jared Goff or Pat Mahomes into immediate stars. So Jerry Jones understands what he possibly could do. But right now, as I stated at the start of the video, sometimes perfect can be the enemy of good. You have to hope to catch lightning in a bottle. They've already got a guy who they know is responsible. And maybe a responsible guy on the Cowboys is what they need.
And Dak has reminded us of that recently. When he looked like he was backsliding, he reminded us of that recently.
He crushed the Jags 40-7.
Yes, I was happy to see him perform well in that game. And also, it was better game planning offensively. Stop trying to treat Dak like he's Aaron Rodgers. Let him run some play action. Let him run some option. That's what he needs so that he can feel comfortable back there.
Prescott is at least a middle-of-the-pack quarterback who's big on 3rd down and big under pressure generally. We saw that in that game against Aaron Rodgers. Even though Rodgers did things only he could do, Dak brought him back and kept him in the game. Is that a franchise quarterback? A middle-of-the-pack at least quarterback who's big on 3rd down and good under pressure? Of course it is. Eli Manning didn't have Dak's mobility, but had that won 2 Super Bowls. Dak I think that's the floor for him. That means he is a franchise quarterback.
You have to look at your options. You have to look at your options, man.
I agree, sir. And that's the bottom line of it to me.
Options, Max. The fact of the matter is, when you look around the league in terms of available quarterbacks, you don't necessarily see anybody definitively better than Dak Prescott. When you combine that with the fact that he's entrenched in the system, when you combine that with the fact that Jerry Jones has to know that Jason Garrett ain't the best option as coach, it's just that he loves that man. And Scott Linehan.
Right now, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you're pretty much set on defense. You need some improvement on the offensive line, but in this draft, you have to see if you can pick up some wide receivers. You just have to. That's really the only place where they need help, where it's glaring right now. They need a tight end, and they need receivers.
Linehan ain't the best option as offensive coordinator. He just knows that's Jason Garrett guy, and together they work on the offensive side of the ball. The fact of the matter is, you're looking at a Dak Prescott, and you're looking at the upside, the potential that exists out there.
But Stephen A., would Jerry have come out and said that if he didn't have that game against the Jags after he took so much criticism, Dak?
Well, maybe not, but the point is it did.
That's a good question from Molly Karam. I think that Jerry Jones' statements, his remarks, were directly related to Dak's performance in the game against the Jags, because that provided some hope for the team as well as for Dak's future with the team. I'm already on record as stating that I think that the Cowboys will go 10-6, 11-5 this season. I'm going to stick with that. I think that they're the type of team that gets hotter as the season goes along. I think that they're built to get better as the season goes along and as the seasons change, as the weather gets colder, as you're dealing with more inclement weather. They're a physical team that loves to run. They have a physical quarterback. I think that they're going to play better as other teams start to wane. I also see Philadelphia getting hotter. Washington, I've already stated to me, that's a 7-9, 8-8 type team. And the Giants, as I stated in my prediction, to me, they'd be lucky to win 4 games.
It did happen, and it happened convincingly in the sense to me that he was looking for an excuse to say what he wanted to say about Dak, because he's grown fond of Dak, the person, and somebody had to remind him. Dak Prescott has taken a lot of heat, and unlike receivers who have been pointing the finger at him, unlike off-field troubles that Ezekiel Elliott brought, unlike other guys getting suspended and all of this other stuff, this guy at the quarterback position for the Dallas Cowboys has been steady, has been professional, and for the most part productive, and deserves our respect with.
I agree. I think that many of the Cowboy fans have come down a little bit too hard on him. They've tried to lambaste him for the season that he had last year. I'm not quite sure exactly what you could have asked more from him, especially with the vanilla offense that they were running and Des Bryant's depreciation as a wide receiver. Do I ever see Dak Prescott being one of these quarterbacks who's throwing 38 touchdowns and 5 interceptions? No. But you have to tailor your offense according to what he does best and throw some wrinkles in there. Be imaginative. Right now you have a great defense. You have a great running back in Ezekiel Elliott. You have a quarterback who you know is not an idiot out there on the field. What they need to do is draft another tight end who can fill the void that Jason Witten left. That would do wonders to assist Dak. They need a couple of big physical receivers. I'm not quite sure if you're going to be able to find anybody big and physical who can also stretch the field. A receiver like that will probably go early in the first round, and I would expect the Dallas Cowboys to be drafting most likely in the bottom half of the first round. But that's where they need assistance. That's where they need to improve their personnel.
Where it's due, because his winning record, his record is 25-13 as a starter.
I was about to say, Jerry, get him some receivers. But
Yeah.
as a Giants fan, Jerry, don't get him receivers. Keep it just like this.
Dak Prescott again.
Why did you have to bring up the Giants?
Dak
I was in
Prescott,
such a good mood.
Dak Prescott again, 25-13 as a starter. It could be worse.
All right. So not just college football tonight, not just the...
But anyway, that's basically it on the Dak Prescott conversation. We'll see how things go with him and the Cowboys. So peace.